Welcome to today's episode of Euphoric Intentions. I'll be your driver today on this road trip through the mind. No monkey business. And that's the exact intent of this video. We're not messing around, we're not beating around the bush. We're out clapping the vines and the trees in which the peaks represent knowledge. They represent euphoric moments of enlightenment in which we glean the true aspects of knowledge itself and gain greater understanding into the complexities of the simplicity which surrounds us in everyday life. So, why no monkey business? Well, the whole intent of this video is to draw a relation and actually distinguish the true difference between man and his closest neighbor. Now, don't play a game of semantics with me over monkeys and apes and the true difference between the two. I mean, if we could see all the cracks within our skin if we go in close enough. And we could realize that we ourselves are more space than physical material. But diving so deep actually renders the greater picture or the whole itself in disarray, giving us inability to actually really gain glimpses into the true nature of things as we went beyond the mark, so to speak. So, monkeys are relatives, right? And in no way, shape, or form are we ourselves as humans related in any way through behavior, through morphological features, through ancestry, or through, just everyday living, so to speak. I mean, look at us. I ain't swinging through no vine. I ain't going from tree to tree. I ain't picking out bugs and eating it from my brother. Nah, man. I'm out driving a vehicle, right? I'm cruising the streets in my 6'4". But what is it truly then that separates us from the animal kingdom? Is it truly our action? Are we actually above the animal kingdom itself? Or do we merely separate and distinguish ourselves from this kingdom through sheer belief? But is belief and opinion able to overcome the facts themselves? And when belief and opinion go against the facts presented, do we then ourselves continue in a state of disbelief in regards to the facts presented? Or do we ourselves then try to disassociate from the facts? We try to disregard the notions that we ourselves aren't above the most minuscule of microorganisms or single-celled life in our behavior, in our actions. We are, by any sense of the definition of gods themselves. Yet, by us actually acknowledging the fact that we do fall into the definition, for all intensive purposes, of a god, who is it that will save us? Nobody but ourselves.
Good morning, thank you for Starbucks. What can I get started for you?
Yeah, can I get, let's see here, a venti caramel macchiato?
Alright, a venti caramel macchiato. Can I get you anything else?
No, that'll be it, man.
Alright, 5 6 window.
Hey, cool, thanks. again, we got to get a little grounded in this road trip before we float off. And I'm not talking about floating off if I unbuckle my seatbelt here into the far reaches of outer space. I'm talking about floating off into the far reaches of the mind, which in most cases is just as vast and expansive as outer space itself. Seemingly all things which can be envisioned in your external reality can be envisioned within the mind itself. For example, I already have pictured out how I want to arrange and format this entire video. I wanted to do some sort of presentation where I was narking on the fact that people don't like to associate human beings or themselves as these primitive, like, primates that really are so animalistic in nature and in their behavior themselves, but do it in a way where I was like speaking about how there's no connection, but then showing images of all these connections between the behaviors of people and the similarities between these behaviors and animals in the animal kingdom, you know, like somebody going and getting their hair cut and having a monkey going and picking out his friend's fur for bugs, or, you know, having somebody use tools and then having these other animals use tools, or you know, having people go to war, showing images of different human civilizations and societies going to war, and then showing like warring troops and tribes of baboons going at each other. You know, just the whole carnal nature of us eating and dissecting food. If you really contemplate the whole aspect of that notion in and of itself, where, you know, we go and we let out the blood of a beast and then we dissect its parts and throw away the parts which aren't necessarily able to be digested, and then we dissect this creature, and it's just so carnal, it's just so like gross in a sense, and people don't necessarily like to really associate with that part of life. You know, it's like we're not these things that we are, but we in a sense are gods, but we don't want to say it because then who will save us? Life is trippy if you think about it enough. I mean, on one face of the coin, it's like there's this duality where we're so carnal and primitive, but then on the other end, it's like we're trying to like separate ourselves from these carnal like interactions between, you know, the sexuality and the nutritional aspect of it all, and then there's the intellectual and the spiritual aspect. Where we like disassociate ourselves from ourselves.
Macchiato.
Yes, sir.
All right, 534, man.
You're a vet, huh?
What's up? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I noticed your bracelet.
Yeah, I got out, what is it, June? 4 months ago.
How long do those things last? Like,
What things?
your bracelet that you got on?
This thing's almost a year old now.
Yeah.
For a while. I don't know. I mean, they're
'Cause
pretty solid.
I see vets wearing them all the time. Like, do they?
Like it takes effort to get off. So I mean.
Yeah. Like, you gotta probably have like snipper, like metallic snippers, huh?
No, you can pull it off. Like, it'll bend. It's just they're pretty damn sturdy.
For real?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to drink stopper, bud?
Nah.
All right, there you go, man.
Hey, thanks, brother.
You have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
All right. What can I get started for?
Yeah, so it's like, you know, we conduct all this business and we put it in like numbers, and, you know, we write and we communicate with language, and we're like, oh, well, look at us. We're so advanced. We're so not like all these other primitive creatures, which are so carnal. But then, you know, at the end of the day, we kind of all go take our clothes off and we're just naked, and we're just this, you know, big old bag of flesh and blood, kind of just like everything else. That was a crazy turn, but I made it happen. This probably isn't the smartest thing that I'm doing. Road tripping, yo. Whatever. It's nice to kind of go on a little drive, you know. Exhaust your thoughts and your mind a little bit. See if anybody else thinks about a lot of the same things that you do. Post it into a format which is easy for people to be relaxed and view while they have free time. Maybe be like, yeah, I've thought that same thing, man. We are just little, you know, monkeys just going around eating the bugs out of other monkeys' hairs. Just whatever, you know. But yeah, it's like so weird because people, we like to ascribe like godlike qualities to ourselves. And it's almost like we fit into the definitions that we ascribe to the term God. But at the same point in time, we actually don't ascribe ourselves to the definition. It's like a superposition. It's like talking about a light particle, how it's like a wave and it's not necessarily like physical matter, but at the same point in time, it actually is. It's like a superposition of like these two parts where we're like subconsciously ascribing all of the actual facets of deity to the human experience and to human beings. I mean, what do people necessarily ascribe to God? Like all-knowing, the ability to, you know, affect reality or pretty much alter environment. You know, you ever play that game where it's like, is it man-made or is it, you know, is it of God? But the lines really have became very like disintegrated. They're no longer so visible and extreme and bold and broad, you know. The lines between being able to manipulate the natural world and, you know, being able to be omnipresent. I mean, I can sit in one location and view a location pretty much on the other side of the globe without necessarily moving my position itself. And so in this sense, I can be, you know, in a lot of places at once without necessarily me myself being in those places. And so it's like, yeah, you know, we like ascribe these qualities to like God, but then we don't necessarily actually come full circle and say that we're describing ourselves, so to speak, because that's kind of, in a sense, what it is that we're doing. We're kind of like describing ourselves, but we don't want to admit it, because if it is just us, then how is it that we're supposed to save ourselves? If there are already like so many problems out there, and we are literally the most powerful thing, then all the problems are due to our own actions, and there isn't necessarily a force that's going to come and literally save us from ourselves, so to speak. I mean, I wanted to do like some parody where, you know, you have people and they're waiting around for aliens. And then what happens is some of their friends come by and they're like, hey guys, what is it that you're doing? And they're like, we're waiting for the aliens to come. And they're like, oh, well, you know, why is it that you're waiting for the aliens to come? And in a lot of ways, I think people subconsciously like really reach out for a lot of these things because they believe that it will be the end-all solution to all of the problems which we face within current society. You know, if there is such an advanced race which is intergalactically traveling, then they would have solved all of the issues and problems which we face here on planet Earth. You know, the perfect form of government, energy, being able to sustain the planet's ecosystems and all of these other aspects. And, you know, medicine pretty much live forever due to bioengineering and whatnot. And so it's like they're sitting there waiting forever for these aliens to come to literally solve all these problems. But then their friends keep coming over and pestering them and being like, hey, did you check out this new advancement in science and technology? And they're like, no, we're sitting here waiting for the aliens to get here. And then, you know, their friends come back and they're like, hey, did you see that, you know, we can now, we've bioengineered our bodies enough to be able to live 1,000 years, and we can actually regrow tissues. And they're like sitting there, no, we're waiting for the aliens to come. And it's just kind of this whole parody. And it's the same thing where you have people that ascribe all of their like waiting and all of their energy into spiritual leadership as well, because they're sitting there thinking that, you know, out of this apocalypse is going to come the greatest like civilization that can ever be conceived or imagined, and it's going to be like a utopia of sorts. And they're sitting there saying, we're waiting for our savior, we're waiting for our savior. And then, you know, you have your friends coming by and they're like, well, what are you guys doing? We're waiting for the apocalypse to come to destroy everything which is evil and bad, and then we'll be in perfect harmony with, you know, all things. And then their friends keep coming back and telling them about all these great discoveries that mankind is making. Hey, we just cured this disease. Hey, we just came out with this technology. And they're sitting there saying, you know, blasphemers. And they're saying, we're waiting for our savior to come. And it's kind of like this whole parody on, you know, that we don't necessarily want to take the responsibility of saving ourselves, or the fact that we're ascribing ourselves without necessarily directly saying it, that we are the actual spiritual like thing that we're striving for, but we don't want to admit it, because then what else is there? If it's just us, then we're doomed pretty much. And so people don't want to look at it that way. They want to like put their faith in something else, something beyond them, because of how nasty it is already. There has to be something better than us. And so people do this in an attempt to really try and separate themselves and like strive for what it is that they have deemed as this deity or God. And, you know, it's like you hear about in the stories of Adam and Eve, where, you know, God created man, and then it was the job of man to watch over the garden. And the garden is in representation of the world itself, where mankind has the ability to literally manipulate and terraform and geoengineer our surroundings. And so in so many ways, we pretty much are the caretakers. And if you look at the stories, much more so in that light rather than in a lot of the religious extreme ways in which many people purport them to be, then they actually will make a lot more sense to you. And you're like, hey, yeah, we are kind of the caretakers. But then it's really funny because a lot of the people that really get into it super religiously actually are blinded by the actual truths. And then so when the notion comes around that it's like, hey, we have to take care of the planet and we have to watch out for all these things and everything like that, then people throw it to the side, and then they go to the other extreme and then they say, no, that's all God's worry and concern. That's not necessarily our concern. And then, you read further into the texts and then you literally translate from the ancient texts themselves. God is merely the collective consciousness of intelligences. And human beings are a part of that collective consciousness where we manipulate our surroundings based upon our understanding of the natural world, which is pretty much one of the defining characteristics of God itself. Yet at the same point in time, we don't directly point out or make the connection that this ascribes us with the responsibilities of God, but we don't want to admit it, not only to others, but to ourselves, because not only will you be heavily criticized, but also what happens is that this whole fascination with salvation or the being of something greater than ourselves, which actually has the potential and ability to solve all of our problems, which we currently can't solve, is no longer actually in the picture anymore. And we have to deal with all of these issues and situations ourselves. And so people don't necessarily ever like to directly point that out. And so, we use all of this stuff that we disassociate like our intellect with like our flesh. And the human species is such a unique creature in this manner, because it's like we are like this creature, but at the same point in time we hate this creature. And it's like all of the things which actually support the notion and show similarities between us and the rest of the natural world are ridiculed due to the fact that they actually show that we're, in a sense, no more greater than these monkeys or these apes, or even a tree or a bug. And people it's like this weird dual relationship where they like to be above all that stuff, but then at the same point in time they don't like to be at the top, because then they themselves are responsible for all that is, and they can't necessarily fall back upon God or what it is that they contradict themselves of God being, so that they don't necessarily have to have the total responsibilities of God, and they can be saved by God without themselves having to realize the fact that they're describing themselves in a lot of ways. And so we disassociate from this. We strive to not be a part of the carnal and of the animalistic world and this whole primal and this whole ritualistic behaviors which are perpetuated throughout society and are so ingrained with our mental and our physical being that we deify ourselves and we exemplify these peaks and these ideals which in no way resemble the organic world anymore. But then, we don't like to totally make the next leap to like spiritual exaltation, where we're no longer held at all by these carnal desires. But we don't want to do that, because then all of the responsibilities of God falls upon our shoulders, so to speak, and nobody can save us but ourselves. And, you know, then it's like we rise up to this like ideal peak up here where it's like these qualities of deity and these spiritual aspects, but then we like are about to reach this pinnacle, and then it actually drives us away. We're repelled from it, and then so we drive ourselves back down to this really primitive and carnal state where we're children and our parents need to take care of us. And it's kind of funny because then what happens is, as you drive yourself back down, you actually reach that spiritual state once again, because, you know, the whole natural world, in a sense, resembles the intellectual world up here that I'm talking about people striving for. And as soon as you reach this peak down here, it's literally just the same thing as up there, but how you're viewing it is actually making it seem like it's down here rather than up there. And so we strive back down for this, and then you realize, you know, in some sense it's like you're watching the movie Avatar, and the world is like this living consciousness, and all information itself is actually passed and interconnected between all matter and energy. And that's the whole spiritual side of like going completely back down deep into like the carnal and primitive state. But then what happens is then, you know, things become real dirty, and things become so organic and like full of soil and dirt and blood and grime that it's like, you know, that like that limit down there is like the limit of like this spiritual exaltation, this peak at this extreme depth. But then it's just like so mucky, and like that's real life. You know, you go in the wild and it's like things eating each other, things just having sex, and it's like dirty and grimy. And, you know, then it's like we need to shower, we need to clean off, we need to be baptized in like waters which are going to balance ourselves out again and allow us to separate ourselves again from all of these things. And then again, what happens is then we strive back up, and then what we see happening is this frequency and this wave actually occurring where, you know, we are constantly being ping-ponged between these two poles. And life is merely just trying to find that balance between these two poles. You know, it's like we're so carnal and primitive, but then we go to our jobs and we dress up and act like we're robots in a sense, because technology and you know, metal is so clean. It's not necessarily like this dirty flesh, and there's not all these organic fluids that are being pumped through all these organs and tissues that make a mess and that are all sticky and, you know, grimy all over the place. And so we surround ourselves in this plastic and metallic reality that gives us a sense of cleanliness. It allows our intellect to then again separate from this dirty organic nature of everything. And then we reach that peak, and then, you know, we're again driven away from it because of what it represents, and then we again strive back down for this other peak, or this other depth, which, you know, if you're diving down, it's still up in that sense. So, but yeah, people are just animals that don't want to be animals anymore. But then as soon as they reach the other peak, it's like, hey, you know, this other peak actually was the spiritual and technological advancement that we were seeking. You know, it's like a lot of people think that the advancement in the future will be with the incorporation of technology with biology, where, you know, we infuse ourselves with technological machines to actually house like our consciousness, so to speak, and become like, in a sense, like cyborgs, or literally fully robotic. But in my personal opinion, the information that is like passed around through these processing chips and through silicon and other electronic circuits doesn't necessarily hold a flame between organic and biological systems, the amount of information that is passed through those, and the capabilities of manufacturing differing tissues, which in a sense could actually still accomplish the same functions that metallic and computer technology itself today actually accomplishes. Like, for example, you go and you watch Ghost in the Machine, and it's like these people, his eyes get blown off, and so he gets, some cyborg implant where it connects and links directly to his brain, which allows him to see in all these different wavelengths and frequencies. But in the truth of the matter is that I think that once people advance enough, it's not necessarily going to be any of us incorporating machine parts into biological systems. We're going to utilize technological systems and machines to actually advance biological and organic systems, like within the genetics labs, where we see the code in these molecular structures rather than code within programming a computer, so to speak. And we actually allow ourselves and these tissues and this organic matter within our bodies to actually function on the same parameters by rewriting our molecular code to accomplish the same functions as technological code. For example, like I use this cell phone and these things to transmit messages, electromagnetically through the air, which are picked up by receivers and antennas. Well, in the future, I don't necessarily think that we will incorporate metallic systems within our body which allow us to transmit and receive these messages. However, what actually may be the case is that we design organic tissues which replicate the same functions as a cell phone, which from the actual point of conception of the species itself will literally alter the human species, where the genetic code of the species is actually modified to literally house within it tissues which allow us to have telepathic communications, where literally these organic tissues and molecules are arranged in such a fashion which allow us ourselves to consciously and awareingly create and produce electromagnetic waves and frequencies, and possibly have, differing screens of vision from the portions of our brain which allow us to see, where we can overlay different images with each other within the external world and within our internal functioning organic systems, which then would allow me to oscillate crystals and vibrate organic systems, tissues within my body, which create an electromagnetic frequency transmitted and literally relayed by other organic things, and then literally received by organic tissue itself. It's not going to be, we're going to mesh our future, bodies with technology. Literally, technology is going to be used on the cellular level and the genetic level to actually alter the coding of tissues and organ systems themselves to literally replicate and surpass the functions and capabilities of metallic and computer and silicon technology, where biology literally surpasses the notion of simply, like fusing ourselves with machine. We're going to be fused in the sense that the species will be altered using machine techniques, but the human body and form itself, I think, would be really unaesthetic and non-pleasing to the eye, whether it's just visually or sexually, as soon as all these metallic parts come into play. So the real advancement in the future, in my eyes, is going to be through bioengineering, tissue growth, and in actually replicating the functions which metallic and other technologies actually function as, by altering biological components and growing tissues which outperform these other technologies themselves. Now, in my mind, the biggest hurdle in regards to these sciences is the morals and ethics, which would need to be overcome by a lot of people, because there's going to be a need for a lot of experimentation to gain the results and to gain the efficiency within the procedures themselves, to create organisms which actually are viable, and then the human species itself can literally progress in that direction. But it's going to have to be a huge mindset of change, where people are saying, I don't want my money being invested in some mad scientist experiments that's creating who knows what in the lab that's going to destroy humanity. What needs to happen is there needs to be literally secret laboratories where you have these rich, eccentric financiers who are financing these extremely brilliant scientists to work secretly in the labs beneath governments, beneath the eyes of the people, so that they don't necessarily have the morals and ethics riding their back and saying, what is it that you're doing? But that will be the next advancement in humankind, is literally bioengineering and engineering ourselves to, literally be able to grow wings and fly and, outperform machines due to the sheer strength that is the tissue itself. Being able to alternate our electromagnetic frequencies and resonate at different energy levels, allowing us to, in a sense, fly, based upon our surroundings and the whole electromagnetic field, which is the external environment ourselves, being able to manipulate our own fields, which will allow us to have different experiences with the fields outside of ourselves. And in a lot of ways, this actually already is part of our biology, as we interact and touch and feel things and come in contact with things. But being able to really overcome the mere fact that it's kind of like this relationship where an organism only advances so much based upon the resources and the environment that's present, but literally being able to become super and actually surpass the environment and this naturally occurring evolution of our bodies to become effective and efficient in our environment, but rather actually becoming over the environment, so to speak, where literally we're so above the environment that we have learned to manipulate our own cellular structures to actually, literally fly within the world itself, due to the fact that we understand the natures and the laws of physics, and being able to repel and attract to certain fields. There's all these invisible fields throughout the world right now, and actually being able to manipulate our own field to interact with these other fields, which allow us much greater experience within life and actually be able to surpass machine technology itself. That will be the future, but to really actually overcome and actually achieve this future and this dream, you would have to literally change the whole moral and ethical viewpoint of people, because for it to become a reality, you'd have to pump a lot of money into the experiments And there's probably going to be a lot of experimentation, which many people would not necessarily agree with or think is moral or ethical in any sense. So yeah, we're all just monkeys that hate being called so we call ourselves something else. But we don't like to be God, so we call ourselves the children of God. But we like to be above everything else, but still below something. And in that sense, it's actually what keeps us with the ability to grow and to change, rather than to realize that in a lot of ways there is no more place to grow and there is no more ways in which we could change, and allowing us to not be stuck in such stagnation or, psychological disbelief or depression based upon a lot of these notions. Well, it's been a little bit of a journey. This has been a great road trip. I hope you've all enjoyed taking a drive with me. I think I have one more thing that I want to touch upon or discuss, and that has to do with what is it that we're attracted to, like physically and sexually. Why is it that we see certain things like attractive in other individuals versus other things? And are we more attracted to money than you might actually think? For example, it's so weird that we're sexually attracted towards certain organisms, I think. For example, just like other human beings, it's like, why am I even sexually attracted towards this thing? It's weird if you actually really dive down and think about it. And it's just kind of written within your code that, you need to reproduce. And obviously you would like to, create a better future for life itself. It's like life is literally this thing experiencing life, and it's trying to create all these branches and webs that are reaching for the greatest experience. And that's part of our internal code. And so it's we're trying to literally embody this this instinct to experience greater life. And so, we are physically attracted to other things which we think will give life the ability to experience greater life. As if all living organisms are literally one superorganism that has this, that we're just the subconsciousness of it, so we can't necessarily see its consciousness, but it itself is conscious but isn't aware of our own consciousness because we're its subconscious. But it's trying to experience this life. And so we're attracted to other things which we think will give it a greater sense of this life, and our future offspring being a part of this organism itself. And are you more attracted to money and power than you originally thought? Because what is beauty? And what is it that makes somebody beautiful? I mean, you don't necessarily even have to look at somebody's balance statement or their their tax sheets or their income sheets or anything like that, and I can tell you in a lot of ways how financially well off this individual is. If they're fairly financially well off, then they're going to have a lot of free time to do a lot of other things and to invest in a lot of other things, which are going to show within them physically. It's going to show within their physical form, how they dress, how they act, their mannerisms, the experiences of life that they've had, which will influence their personality. And so a lot of people may say that, a lot of this stuff is very superficial. financial statements and all of these things are very superficial when you're looking at relationships between people. But the fact of the matter is that financial statements go very deep, and it's like this deep well of resources with all these branching facets of experiences which make up these individuals themselves. And what it is that their family is invested into, and all of these things influence their character, their behavior, their personality. So even if you're attracted to certain types of personality, it's influenced by their actions in the world and their role within the world, which is influenced by their finances. And so you yourself might be a lot more attracted to the prospect of an individual being financially well off, and this being shown in all of their characters and attributes, due to the fact that it influences all of these characters and attributes. And so it's like you're thinking to yourself, I will be financially well off, and it's like an investment almost for your future progeny, like investing in these people. And it's like you're subconsciously like unaware of it, that's what you're doing. Maybe you're consciously aware of it, but a lot of people like to play the game that, a lot of this stuff is only skin deep, so to speak, but it actually is a lot deeper than that, all the way down into like your internal thinking and your internal desires manifest into your external actions, where you're actually seeking all of these things for, a greater sense of life for not only yourself, but for future life, which came from your lineage or your branch or your web or your line, so to speak, within the whole grand scheme of life itself. And so are you more attracted to finances than you originally thought? Because all of this socioeconomic status influences so many aspects of somebody's being and natural character that, it's hard to be attracted to somebody, whether physically or for their personality or for any other aspects of their person, whether it's their ability to survive, and you're saying to yourself internally, this person can survive, so they're fit. And so that's just an exemplary example of survival of the fittest, where you are merely attracted to somebody's ability to survive in the given condition or the environment itself. And so that's kind of why you're attracted to these individuals, which, money in a lot of ways can be manifest in a lot of different forms. Like, I can invest in my biology, and it took me a lot of money to get to a state where I'm very physically adept. Somebody who is actually very physically well off, what it actually shows a lot more than just their biological, morphological characteristics is the fact that they had the time, and not only the time, but the resources to actually invest in their body. And you're attracted to the fact that they have power, and it's shown just as much financially as it is physically, because to actually gain a lot of these physical attributes, you had to be pretty financially well off and not necessarily a slave to the financial system itself, having nothing to invest into nothing. You had something to invest into something. You chose to invest it into this, and it shows physically in your appearance, which other people are then attracted to. And they're both, they're attracted to the money aspect of it, because, like I said, they're all just searching for experience, and they're also attracted to the physical aspect of it, which shows that you're willing to invest other energies into other forms of energies, which will be beneficial for you in the long run, which may possibly show portions of your intellect, which may also be attractive to other individuals, because again, they're seeking something which will create the most beneficial sense of life for not only themselves but for what's to come. And so that's just another thing to be attracted to. Well, are you more attracted to money than you officially thought? Is Tinder the official and legal form of Tinder that starts the flame between many individuals, creating a fire of a relationship? Well, that's enough existential talk for a road trip, and I think that I'll leave you all with that. Peace out, folks. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy listening to my thoughts. Watch some of my other videos. There's quite a bit. I'll put links in the information to Instagram, to Facebook, to Twitter, to Snapchat, whatever, so that if you guys want to follow me in other areas as well, then you're welcome to. So yeah, thanks for watching, because giving somebody else your time is literally the most valuable thing you can ever give somebody. Peace out, y'all. Hey, poof.